for your nice introduction. Thanks once again.
Thank you.
So very good afternoon, one and all who present here. I welcome you to the 2 days workshop on research and publication ethics. So outline of today's presentation is divided into three different sections. In the first section, I'll be discussing on introduction to plagiarism softwares like Turnitin, Urkund, and other open source tools. And in the second part, we'll be focusing on database, how the indexing is done. So what is the significance of indexing, the different examples for indexed databases. And we are also discussing two specific indexed database, that is Web of Science and Scopus. And in the third section, I'll be discussing about different research metrics. And these metrics are used to measure the impact of your journal article. And it is divided into three different segments, like journal level research metrics we have, then article level research metrics, and finally we have author level research metrics. And these things we'll discuss in detail by taking various criteria like citation report, SNP value, SJR value, site score value, then H index, G index, I10 index, as well as alt metrics. So this is to provide insight of today's presentation. Okay. So before proceeding further, so we'll be discussing about plagiarism, and in that constant, I'll be discussing about software tools. Okay. And first of all, just let me understand like what you know about plagiarism. So do you have any idea? Have you used earlier? Can I have some answers from participants?
Ma'am, you unmute them and then they will be able to answer.
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah.
Or else they can type in their chat box.
Yeah,
So
I
that
think
would be
typing
fine.
in their chat box will be better, ma'am. Yeah.
So may I get some answers for plagiarism? So what do you understand from plagiarism, the term? Yeah, copying as it is. Yeah, that's good. It's a answer from Vandana. So anybody else? See, it is one kind of plagiarism, copying as it is, then copying without permission. So these are the different forms of plagiarism we have. And it is very essential to have broad knowledge of plagiarism, its different forms, classes, then existence of various tools and systems for its detection. Okay, so these things we'll be discussing in brief. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of answers. So I think you're already aware of plagiarism concept. So it would be easier for me to go through the remaining slides. Okay, so paraphrasing. So that is also a nice answer. So content available on Google or from other papers directly. Yes. So, okay, I'm getting a lot of answers. So, okay, I'll move on to the next slide now. Okay, thanks for responding. So it has to be an interactive session. So if you participate, then it would be more interesting. So it's good. So plagiarism. So how do you define a plagiarism, right? So it is taking somebody else's work or idea and writing it as one's own. So this is the definition of plagiarism we have. And this is one of the most common types of publication misconduct. Okay. So that means when the author is deliberately using another author's work without his permission and without crediting or acknowledging the original source. Okay. And it comes in different forms. Like, as you said, it comes from literal copying to paraphrasing. So there are many forms we have. So those things in brief, we will discuss later. And these information could be data, words or phrases, ideas and concepts. Okay, so this is about plagiarism. Now, do you know anything about the plagiarism, how this term originated? So for that, I have included this slide here. So it is the history of plagiarism. Okay. So actually the term plagiarism, it comes from Latin word plagiaris. So meaning of that is kidnapper. Okay. And this is originally termed by a Roman poet called Martial during 1st century. And he has done this mainly because other poets are stealing his verses. So that is why he originated this word. So even today we are using the same word for plagiarized content, okay, or copied content from the internet. Okay. So later in 1601, actually this term is used in English dictionary as plagiary by author Ben Jonson. Okay, you can see his photo here. So we can say he is the originator of this plagiarism prevention act. So you can call him as father of plagiarism prevention act for modern era. And later in 1755, it is defined as the crime of literary theft. Okay. But later, this definition of plagiarisms and opinion about plagiarism that is varied over time, because we know that it is crime or unethical to use someone else's content without referencing or citing properly in our research article, right? But the concept of plagiarism is considerably changed over time. Okay, even though this concept introduced during 1st century, later, during Middle Ages, this plagiarism was just a normal part of writing. That means sometimes it is credited, whatever the text we are copying, that is credited to original source, then it is added to references. Sometimes it's not, but still they have not considered this as a serious offense. Okay. But later, things slowly started to change, and the scholars, poets, scientists began asserting ownership of their work. Okay, so this is an important milestone we can observe in preventing plagiarized content. Then during 18th century, copyright laws are introduced. Okay, then started looking at this plagiarized content as a offensive content. Then in 19th century, the academics further refined the understanding of plagiarism, establishing standards for proper citation. Okay, and today there is no excuse for plagiarism. Even in civil court, it could be penalized. So that is the severity of plagiarism. Okay, so now let us see about the different levels of severity. Okay, so it depends on how much of someone's work was taken, right? It could be few lines, few paragraphs, or few pages, or full article, right? So based on this, we can measure the level of severity of plagiarized content, okay? And then it also depends on what was copied, right? So if it the result directly you are copying, or are you copying methods or just the introduction section, okay? If you're copying just the introduction section, then the weightage of that offense will be less. Rather than if you are directly copying results, then severity of that offense will be more. So in that way, we can measure different levels of severity. Okay, so this is about the plagiarism levels. Now let us see the different forms of plagiarisms and how to prevent them, right? So here in this table, I have just mentioned the different forms of plagiarism, right? So first we will start because, so this might be known concept as you have some of you answered is as copying as it is, paraphrasing, etc. So it is divided into 4 different forms here. There are many more forms, but here I am listed only 4 important forms. So first one is literal copying. So what is meant by literal copying, right? It is reproducing a work word for word. That means you're copying as it is. That is without permission and acknowledgement. See, this is important. So if you're copying as it is without permission or acknowledgement of the original source, it is unethical. Okay. So how to prevent this, right? So this is acceptable only if you reference that source or put the quotation marks around the copied text. So this thing you have to do. Then it will not be considered as plagiarized content. Okay. Then the second type is substantial copying. So this means here we are defining both quantity and quality of what was copied. That means if your work captures the essence of another's work, then it should be cited. Okay. So it is called as substantial copying. You're copying the essence of someone else's work, like it could be research materials, processes, tables, or any other equipment. So if you are benefited, definitely you have to cite it so that you can avoid plagiarism. Okay. Then next is paraphrasing. So what is meant by paraphrasing? Some of you answered this. So paraphrasing means we are reproducing someone else's idea, but while not copying word for word. We are not copying as it is. We are writing on in our own words. Okay. So that is called as paraphrasing or rephrasing original text in your own word. Okay. So that is also unethical. Okay, so this need to be cited properly in your research articles. Then is text recycling. So what is meant by text recycling? See, earlier, so when we used to publish a paper, it used to take around 1 to 2 years to get it published. Okay, so then we can't wait for 2 years time. So what we do, we send this paper for multiple journals. Sometimes it will be accepted in more than one journal. Then we at least we have to drop from multiple versions, right? So we have to acknowledge only one version that is published in one journal. But sometimes what we do, we publish in different journal with slight modifications. Okay, it could be our own work, but if you do like that, then is also a big offense. And one more thing, what we do is when we write multiple papers based on our research work, we produce or we reproduce the portions of our work. Okay. So even though it is our work, it needs to be quoted properly and it has to cite from previously published paper. Then only it is ethical. Otherwise, if you are not citing your own work properly, then it could be unethical. Okay. So these are the different forms of plagiarism and how to prevent this. So that is just now I discussed. So this is what we have with respect to plagiarism prevention. Okay. And in summary, we can have this a few points that is mentioned here. Creating the work, crediting the work of others. So it is a crucial part of the process. Whenever you write a research article, it is always better to include your guides or your own previous work properly in your citation. Okay. And also, whenever you do your research work, it has to be on the context of advancement in that field. Suppose you are writing one research paper where you are getting the performance matrix. That means compared to your previous work, suppose the performance matrix measured there is 80%. If you're borrowing the same idea, you have to show that your metric will give more performance value. From 82, it will be increased to 85 or 90. You cannot show the performance metric giving the same value as previous work. So it has to be advancement in that field. So in that way, you can proceed with your research work in your particular domain. Okay. Then also you have to acknowledge the findings of others on which you have built your research work. So this is how we prevent plagiarism. Okay. So even though we prevent plagiarism while writing research articles, intentionally or unintentionally, we might include, or our students or our scholars might include the plagiarized content. It could be intentionally or unintentionally, right? So then how to detect plagiarism, right? Do you have any idea? So how to detect such plagiarism? You can write your answers in your chat box. Hello participants, it's afternoon session. I can understand. I'm really thankful to your patient hearing. So can I have some answers like how to detect plagiarism? So you know, right, so far we have discussed about what is meant by plagiarism, then what are the different forms, what it is called, then how to prevent it, right? So now next question is, intentional, unintentional, if you have some plagiarized content in our research articles, how do we detect such plagiarism? Can I have some answers? Okay, using some automated plagiarism tools like Turnitin. Okay, fine. So I'm getting a good number of answers. So that means you're all actively, I'm actively participating in this session, right? References should be made properly. Authenticate tools, Urkun, yes. So yeah, okay, fine, thanks. So thanks for replying. So I think we have different concepts. See, when I tell about detecting plagiarism, right? See, there are different kinds of plagiarism checking, right? We have text plagiarism, we have source code plagiarism. So for source code, we have different options. Here we focus on text plagiarism. And there are different kinds of detection methods like character based. In character based, character by character, it is going to match to check the plagiarized content. Then we have vector based, so that is based on string mechanism or word matching. Then we have syntax based, then we have semantic based. So there are different types of detection tools, and we cannot check plagiarized content manually because we have millions and millions of information uploaded daily across the world, right? So we need to go for some automated tool, right? So for that, we have to go for online tools for detecting the articles that might have, to check the articles. If there are any articles, they have borrowed some other resource without citing it, right? So that is what we are going to discuss now. So directly, once you write the research article, so directly we cannot go for high-end plagiarism tools, right? So we can have some simple steps to eliminate the plagiarized content in our initial phases, right? So what we can do is, simplest way is to run the Google search to check a small section of the paper that might be plagiarized. So this is the easiest way of doing it. So using this, to some extent, we can remove that plagiarized content. Then we can use some free online tools for more thorough search than Google search. And finally, we can try for commercial service for. Yeah, participant, can you mute the background? Okay, I think the background noise is eliminated. So that is fine. So we can go for some commercial service for more efficient searching. Like we can go for automated software tools for detecting plagiarism. And once again, it depends on the number of papers you're going to check. If you have large number of papers, you can go for institutional license. If not, you can buy membership for yourself for checking plagiarized content of your research articles. Okay. So here we have some important points with respect to software tools. So as you all know, it is used mainly to check a document or portion of a document for duplicate or plagiarized content. So how it does, it checks the same phrases, terms, quotes, etc. And some plagiarism checkers can also detect similarities in wording and paraphrasing. And once you get positive result, now suppose if you get 100% plagiarized content, no point in rectifying errors there, right? At least if you get 30 to 50% of plagiarized content, you can go back, you can modify your problematic part, then once again you can check. So this process can be repeated. So in that way you can detect plagiarism, right? Then what is the evaluation criteria for plagiarism, right? Because we always need to check for plagiarism before submitting any research article, right? So this coverage is evaluated in a Richter scale from 0 to 5 points. As you can see here, 5 points for almost all text similarity detected. So it is the weightage given. So this is how the evaluation criteria is performed in plagiarism detection softwares. Then if major portion is copied, it is assigned 4 points. More than half content is plagiarized means 3 points. Half or less content plagiarized means 2 points. And very minor portion means 1 point. And one sentence or less than plagiarized content means 0 points. In this way, for each of the plagiarized content, the weightage is assigned. So based on that, plagiarized content percentage will be displayed. Okay. Now, this plagiarized content, when you have, it has to be specified in the form of report, and it depends it depends on the software tools that we use. So sometimes we get reports which are in downloadable form, or sometimes the results are saved in user's account and can be reviewed later here. And sometimes the matched passages are highlighted either in online or offline report. So in that way, we can revisit the problematic part and we can rectify the error. Or we also have the option of evidence of similarities demonstrated side by side with the source, either in the online or in the downloaded report. So in that way, based on the evaluation criteria, based on the source of reference which is not cited, we can get the report and we can revisit to our problematic area and we can rectify the error. So in that way we can do. So now let us see on different software tools that we use for detecting plagiarism, right? So as you said, there are many tools that are used. So in past few decades, there are several detection tools have been developed, and some of them tools will be uh, specified here because there are n number of tools, and here I am discussing only few tools. If time permits, in the end, once again, I'll revisit those tools. Here I am discussing about Turnitin, Urkund, then Authenticate and Viper. So these are the 4 tools I am using. And if you want, you can just go to their website and you can just check the features, characteristics that are offered to the user, and what is the criteria used for evaluation and how to rectify the error, what is the source of plagiarized content, etc. So that is what it is mentioned here. We have Turnitin. So Turnitin is a paid software. Then we have Urkund. So earlier it was free, then we have premium version here now. Then CopySpace. So that is also free and premium version we have. Then Docolog. So this is also one of the detection tool. So this is a paid version. Then DupliChecker. So we have both the free and premium version. So Authenticate, it is a paid software. The Viper, so this is earlier it was free. It had free version. Now we have a premium version. Then Plagiarism Checker, it is a paid software. Then Plague Scan, it is also paid. And Strike Plagiarism, we have both free and premium versions. Okay. So now we'll discuss in brief about the Turnitin, Urkund, then Authenticate and Viper detection tools. Okay. So you all familiar with the Turnitin software. Most of the educational institutions are using this Turnitin software for detecting plagiarized content, right? So it is known to all. It is very famous. So few concepts that is related to Turnitin as I'm going to discuss now. So I'll quickly scroll through so that I have to complete all the topics of my today's presentation. Okay, actually we quickly go through the concepts given here. So Turnitin was founded in 1999 by 4 students, and later it became an international known company. And 2014, it is acquired by Dutch system Iforus, and in 2019, this company itself was taken over by US company called Advance, and it is focusing on only international user, and there are around 15,000 institutions in 150 countries using this Turnitin software, right? So you can just check the efficiency of this Turnitin. We can, it is a trustworthy software, right? And there are many content databases which is having over 70 billion current and archive web pages. And there are 1 billion student pages, papers, and it covers almost all disciplines, and it covers many languages. It not just for English like languages, it is for all regional languages. Most of the regional languages are supported here. So this is the Turnitin facts that are given here, as you can check in this presentation. So Internet Archive, we have more than 70 billion. Pages crawled and updated daily is how much? It's a 68 million pages. And 15 million new pages are added daily. And then we have 4,500 open access repositories which are crawled weekly. Then there are 47,000 subscription journals, 74 million subscription articles, and more than 1,700 publishers from around the world are using this. Like we have many statistics here. So that is why it is very, very important software. Okay. And these are a few facts related to Turnitin features. So it uses its own crawler. So actually the ordinary crawlers, we have the regular search engines we can use like Google search engine or from Microsoft Bing search engine. But this Turnitin uses its own crawler to search the web, and how it compares the text. It is against any published academic articles, their own database, or optionally institutional databases it is going to check. And why it is so famous? Because it is very easy to use, it has a good interface, and it supports large repository and detailed text plagiarism check, and it is a well organized report generation. It comes in different colors, and for each plagiarized content gives the percentage of, you might have observed, and you might, most of them might have used this software for checking your document. So that is why it is very, very important. Okay. Then we'll move on to Urkund. Okay. And this Urkund software, because nowadays it is gaining its popularity as compared to Turnitin software. Okay. So it is a competitor for Turnitin now. So it is actually founded in 1999 for detecting, handling, and preventing plagiarism on text content. And it is owned by private equity fund called Procurators Capital Investors located in Stockholm. And it claimed to be a leader in Nordic countries. So Nordic countries means there are many countries like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, Iceland. Okay, some background noise. Okay. So these are the things with respect to Urkund, and they have, but here they don't crawl the web page on their own system. Instead of they're using Google search engine as well as MS Bing. So this is related to Urkund. We have some facts or details. Then it is a web-based service for plagiarism detection at the server side, and it uses some standard email system for document submission and for viewing results. And it is an integrated automated solution for plagiarism detection, and it has over 300 different types of document submissions. Okay, and it is mainly for educational institutions, because if the content is from educational source, priority is given for that. So that is why it is meant for, mainly it is meant for institutional purpose. Apart from that, it has some merits and demerits here. So as you can see, advantages of this Urkund software is listed here, like it is a high content of digital footprints or source materials, and there are around 130 millions of articles from global publishers, because just now we discussed the statistics of Turnitin. So here also we have very good number of articles which are scanned and checked. Then 300 million Urkund's archives are present here. 43 billion web pages are there. And even it is supporting 30 different foreign languages. Well, even in Turnitin also, they allow to submit the information in non-English language also, but it is based on translated matching concept. So we can check whether the content is plagiarized based on the foreign languages. But what is the demerit here? It is very poor in local Indian languages. Why? Because as we know, we are very good at English and we adopt that language easily. So that is why I think much of the research is not taken for this local Indian languages. Someone should really think of working in this direction, right? And these are the supported file formats, because there are, it is some, I think very few file formats are mentioned here. It's much more than that. As you can see here, document formats that are supported, then PowerPoint formats are supported, then PDF formats are supported, rich text formats supported, HTML format supported, so ODT format. So that is nothing but open document text file, then word processing file, so that is here .srxxw, then presentation, then written presentation, and spreadsheet formats, like different formats are supported by Urkund. And this is the character limit that is shown here. Actually documents, if they are having less than 4 lakh characters, it is termed as one document. Otherwise, they will be treated as two documents up to 8,000 characters. If it is beyond 8,000 characters, it is treated as 3 documents. Okay. Then we have Authenticate. So this is also one of the important uh, detection tool for plagiarized content. So the concept remains the same, only things the way in which they match the content is slightly different from one detection system to another detection system. And here it is very easy to use, and it is quick plagiarism checker for professionals. And it is mainly used at the institutional level rather than personal use. And most of the documents which are available on the web could be compared using this application. So that is why it is very important. So these are the things with respect to Authenticate. Then we have Wiper. Okay. So it is the plagiarism checker that is founded in 2007, and it focuses on all types of customer. And this is also one of the important tool for checking the content here. And it is based on pay as you go principle. And more than 10 billion sources and documents are present in the computer. So that could be scanned by using this detection tool. And this tool offers unlimited resubmitting of documents, and it also provides links to plagiarized work in the report. So this is important. So these are some of the features of Wiper. So actually I wanted to show the demo of this Wiper detection tool. So let me check here. I will share the screen because I've already executed that. So this is how when you log on to this Wiper website, it asks for your whether you are a registered user or not. So if you are a registered user, I hope this screen is visible, right? Is the screen is visible?
No, madam.
Okay, 1 minute.
It is visible. I can see the Wiper demo.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, 1 minute. Yeah, it's actually screen is shared. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay, okay, fine. See, actually, when you go for that particular website,
Sorry, ma'am. Web page is not visible.
oh, okay, fine.
Ma'am, if you are presenting only the PPT, then it will not show. You have to present your whole desktop or choose to share that particular
Yeah,
web.
sure, sure. I'll be doing that. 1 minute. Just give me a second. Yeah,
Hello?
it's visible now.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
this is the web page of
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, this is the web page of Viper detection tool. So you will get into this website when you register. So if you're a registered user, you have to give your username and password. Then you can log on to this particular web page. So in the initial and previous slides, I have mentioned the different URLs for different detection tools. You can use that one here for checking the working of different detection tools. So here I'm showing for one of such tool called Viper. Okay, so here you have various option. Actually, it is now it has have this premium option. So when I try to, so this is the document I have here to check the plagiarized content. So this is one of my paper, automated segmentation of handwritten Devanagari scripts. Okay, so this is done by my students some 4 years back. Okay, so I'm using the same thing for showing this plagiarized content because I've introduced some portion as plagiarized content here. So I have to click on this, then even I can send email notification on scan completion so that I will get the report in my email. Okay, I have other options also. When I try to click uh, this option, so this option is used to get the information from my desktop also. So there are different options that you can explore later. So when I give this, when I click on scan, okay, now it is a paid version, right? So I have to buy some credits for scanning my document. So that there are different options available like credit 1, 3, 5, 10, 20, 50 and all. It is based on the number of pages I'm going to scan. I can choose some options because as of now, I have not taken any credits here. So, but I have generated this report earlier. So based on my document, that one I can show you here. 1 minute, I'll share that screen. So give me just 1 second. I'll just show you the report, like how this scanning is done using Viper. So this is the plagiarism report for my document, the automated segmentation of handwritten Devanagari scripts. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this is how the report will be
Yes,
generated.
ma'am.
Yeah. So this is how the report will be generated. As you can see here, it is showing that it has one plagiarized content called we just picked up from this source. That source link will be provided, like where I have picked up the content here. So I can just show you the part in which it has found the plagiarized content. As you can see here, yellow paragraph that is marked in yellow. So this is a plagiarized content. So this is, I have introduced for showing this plagiarized content here. And this is picked up from this original source, so which is not cited. Okay. And as you can see here, it is giving the number of words matched and the percentage of match. So that is 5. So 5%. But when you say it is 5%, actually you can go with that 5% plagiarized content. So if your plagiarized content is up to 30%, then severity level will be more. But if it is 5%, you can go with that plagiarized content. But still, if you want to rectify the error, so you can just go to that particular source. You can check where it has been taken. So because I have taken the content from this particular section called NIBLAG. So this is the thresholding method I have taken, the document that is copied here. So this is what I have copied. Okay, so is it visible?
It is visible.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So these concepts I have copied without citing it. Okay. So this is how the report will be generated, and based on the severity of plagiarism level, so you can go back, you can rectify the error, and then you can once again recheck with your content. Okay. As long as your plagiarized content is below 10%, you can go with that, and you can publish your paper. So this is how we use the different detection tools here. Okay, now I'll just go back to my presentation. The screen is visible?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
sir.
this is how we have. Like this, you can check for different detection tools that is listed here. Okay. So here we complete the first section of today's presentation. So that is different, what is meant by plagiarism, the different tools that is used for plagiarism, right? Next, I'll quickly move on to the next section, the databases and indexing, because we are running out of time. So hardly we have 40 minutes left. I think I have taken more time on this. So we all know what is meant by database, right? Because most of you have studied database, because most of you are using computer systems. So that is why we know about file systems, and then we know what is meant by database, why we are using that, because database is an organized collection of data which is generally stored and accessed electronically from a computer system. And it is also called as aggregate collection of electronic journals, ebooks, and articles. So this is about database we have, and we are using different kinds of database like structured and unstructured database. Now, what is meant by indexing, right? So indexing is nothing but it is a concept that is used to quickly locate data without having to search every row in the database table every time it is accessed. So we should have some kind of indexing so that we can quickly search the content. When you have billions and billions of data, how do you search quickly, right? For that, indexing play an important role. And with respect to research articles, so we have indexing that is with respect to abstracts and bibliography. Okay. What is the purpose of indexing here? So it is used to optimize the performance of the database. It is also used to minimize the number of disk access, and it is also used to quickly locate and access the data. Okay. And here I am listing some index databases. So I'll quickly go through that, because in the later presentation slides, I'm using Scopus and Web of Science that I'll be discussing later. And some that is mentioned in green, I'll be discussing as an index database examples. Apart from that, I have a few index databases that are listed. Like I'll just quickly go through that. Like GeoBase, we have GeoBase, and here we have GeoReference. So that is the database used for geographical, earth, ecological, science related information. Then we have ICONDA, that is International Construction Database, that is mainly used for building construction, civil engineering, architecture, town planning. For all these related information will be stored here. Then we have DOI. So that is the digital object identifier. I think you have come across with this term. Whenever you publish the paper, one unique identification will be given. That is based on this index database criteria. Then we have COBIS. So this is cooperative online bibliographic system and services. And it is having different types of library materials. And for civil engineering related information, we have this. Then for astronauts and aeronautics information, space science, we have all these like aerospace and high technology database. So for business related information, you have materials business file. Then for computer information systems, then mechanical and transportation engineering abstracts we have, and like many more we have here. So these are some examples of index databases. Okay. Now, why this indexing is essential, right? Because you know what is meant by database, then what is indexing, then why this indexing is essential, right? So this helps to access, because your journal will be accessible to a wide audience. So that is why we go for indexing. And it also improve your journal's reputation, okay? And then usually whenever you start your research work, you always go for well-known databases so that you will get wide variety of publicity of your journal. So for these things, we go for indexing. Now, how does indexing work, right? So whenever you have a journal which is indexed by a database, it is immediately made accessible to all users, okay? It is done based on titles, based on full articles, or based on abstract, or based on references, okay? So there are many types of indexing, and this is how it works. And where you should get your journal indexed, right? So for that, you have to choose the right database. It has to be within your domain, okay? And then you should know what is the selection process for that indexed journals. Then you ensure that your journal processes are smooth and efficient, and we approach a company with multiple database, then scope will be more. So based on that, you can get your journal indexed properly. Okay, so these are the things we have. Then where you should get indexed. So that was I was telling. It has to be within your journal scope. So like some of them are listed here. We have Embase. So I have actually a sore throat, so I'm having some problem with my voice. So please bear with me. So we have some indexed databases that are listed here. So just I'm giving some examples, like we have Embase. So that is mainly used by medical field. Then we have PubMed. So that is also used for biomedical literature from licensed journals, online books. So these are the scope of that particular indexed database. Then you have Science Citation Index Expanded. So it is from Thomson Reuters. So they have wide variety of scientific and technical fields. Then we have Biosis Citation Index. So this is also from Thomson Reuters. So this has a range of biological and biological sciences. Then DOAJ, so Directory of Open Access. This I think you are familiar with, because here we have indexes and provide access to many peer-reviewed journals covering history, religion, geography, language, and literature. Then we have bio and abstracts and indexes. So this mainly used for biological, ecological, and environmental sciences. Okay. Apart from that, you have additional list also. So this is about indexing databases. And in the next few slides, I'll be discussing two important citation databases like Scopus and Web of Science. Around 94% of journals which are being indexed are from these two. So that is why we have included the significance of those two here. So that I'll be discussing later. Prior to that, we have some additional list like shall I ask you one question like which journal has the highest impact factor? Do you have any idea?
Scopus.
Yeah, you can just type in your chat box. The journal name, can you just specify which is having highest impact factor? So do you have any idea? Actually, this is from Nature's, this one, journal called Nature Journal. So that is having impact factor around 42.778. It is 42.778. And it's a peer-reviewed journal which is started in 1869. And do you know that one of the criteria for getting Nobel Prize is to publish the paper in Nature's journal? Okay, so this is the criteria we have. So it is one of the most reputed journal we have. Okay, so this is about that. Now we'll move on to citation database. So we quickly move on to citation database here. Okay, what is meant by citation database? So it is indexed database only. So the concept remains the same. So it is mainly used for evaluating publications. So that is why the name is given as citation database. It is one and the same. Okay. So the databases that have been developed for evaluating publications. For example, it could be articles or journals, etc. So we have Web of Science here. So that is what I was telling. So I'll be discussing about Web of Science and Scopus indexed concepts here because those are the more around 94% that covers 94% of your research articles. So that is why they are the important one. And often we get the criteria for publication is it has to be Scopus indexed, right? So that is also one of the criteria we get usually. So that is why you should know the details of these two specifications. So first we'll have Web of Science here. So this is the collection of database maintained by Thomson Reuters. Okay, so it is one of the well-known citation database, and it has categories like biology, physics, electronics, computing databases. Apart from that, it has core collections, which are covering science, social science, humanities, right? And this is one of the trusted publisher independent global citation database. So that is why it is very famous. And why it is famous? Because it is guided by the legacy of Eugen Garfield, because he is the inventor of world's first citation index. So you can say him as the father of citation index. So it is guided by him. That is why it is more popular. And it has powerful research engine. Then it has a multidisciplinary platform it supports. Okay. And there will be around 1.7 billion cited references over 159 million records. You can see the wide variety of concepts that is supported here, and we'll be having over 9,000 leading academic, corporate, and government institutions, and millions of researchers trust this Web of Science. Okay. Now, why Web of Science data, right? You know the characteristics of Web of Science, right? Why we have to opt for Web of Science data, right? Because it is uniquely selective and indexing is uniquely consistent, and it is independent and thorough editorial process, because peer reviewing is very, very important to ensure the journal quality, and more than 50 years of consistent, accurate, complete indexing that is supported here. And every article and all cited references from every journal have been indexed. and it has a comprehensive and complete citation network. Okay, and apart from that, we are having the view of over 115 years of highest quality research. You can get papers from all these years. Okay, so that is why this Web of Science is very, very important. Okay, so that is the significance of this important citation database we have here. So next type is Scopus database. So what is the significance of this Scopus, right? So it is a interdisciplinary bibliographic online database that is launched in 2004. It is containing abstracts and citation database as a competitor for Web of Science, because earlier monopoly was Web of Science. Later, it's slowly replacing this Web of Science, that is by Scopus, and it is from Elsevier. Okay, and the focus area here is science and technology field, and access to Scopus is only through subscription. Okay, and here it has some important characteristics like precise citation results, detailed researcher profiles, optimized analytic powers and researcher work, then empower better decision making and better actions and outcomes. So these are the important features of Scopus. And why we go for Scopus, right? So it is chosen by leading academic, business and government institutions, and it brings superior quality and coverage of Scopus data, and we have advanced analytics and technology under one solution, and there are around 24,600 active titles and 5,000 publishers are indexed here in Scopus, and it has rich metadata architecture that is used to connect numerous people, publication ideas and institutions. Okay, and Scopus, apart from this, it also helps to combat predatory publishing and protect the integrity of scholarly record, and make the research workflow more efficient and effective, empower institutions to strengthen performance, rank, and reputation, enable funders to optimize their investments. Okay, so these are the important features that are supported by Scopus. Now, my question is, what is meant by predatory publishing? Do you have any answer? Can I just check with the chat window? Do you have any idea about predatory journals or predatory publishing? Have you come across this word earlier? No. Okay, fine. See, predatory publishing means it is journals. Say, for example, if a particular journal, if it is actively asking researchers for manuscripts, frequently asking, okay, by advertisement, something like that, and they will not be having peer review system. So no peer review system means if you're publishing article today means by end of the day your work will get published. So no peer review and no true editorial board. So in the website they will post the eminent personalities in their editorial board, but frankly speaking, so it is false information they are providing just to attract scholars or researchers or students for publishing their work. And they, what they do is often they go with publication with worthless papers. So not relevant papers, worthless papers they're going to publish. And for that, they charge heavily, okay? The fee of publication will be more, okay? So such journals are called as predatory journals. And if you just type this one in Google, around 4,000 such predatory journals will be listed. Okay, so you can just go through all those journals and you see to it that you will not publish in those journals. Okay, because they are termed as predatory or blacklisted journals. Okay, actually, incidents one of such incident it has happened recently. So one Hyderabad-based company group actually, which was publishing over 700 journals per year. Can you imagine? 700 journals, not the articles. They boast of authenticating 700 different journals. And later, this company is confiscated by US Federal Trade Commission for providing false claims about peer reviewing and forcing editors who have not agreed to be associated with journals. And this number is keep on increasing day by day. And it is very difficult to identify such predatory journals. So that is why you have to be very careful and you have to go through authenticated source. Otherwise, you will finally end up in publishing such predatory journals. So that you need to avoid. Okay. So this is about that. So next, the second part of my presentation is got over. So regarding questions, we will discuss at the end. So now I'll move on to my third section, that is research metrics. Okay. Now, are you getting bored? So I thought of including some funny pages or videos or cracking some jokes, but I think I'm running out of time. So I'm very happy that you are.
That will be good, ma'am.
So it is it's completely theoretical. So what we say is when we are having, so suppose it's just one word I just wanted to share with you.
Yeah.
Suppose if you are taking content from one paper, okay, it is called as plagiarism. But if you are taking or stealing content from multiple papers or multiple sources, then it is called as research. Okay, it is lighter side of that. So, but we will not go by that. So there are a lot of ethical issues involved. So now we'll be having the interesting part here, that is research metrics. I think really you'll find it interesting. So we'll be having some calculation metrics to find the impact of your journal, impact factor of your journal, your article, or your the author's contribution. So that we will discuss now. So as we know, in the academic publishing industry, we measure the impact of published research work. It is based on various metrics, right? So we have here measures which are from some standard research metrics that are mentioned here, like scholarly output and citation count. I hope you know what is meant by scholarly output, right? So it is total number of research outputs to present the productivity. Then citation count, I think you're all familiar with. So it is reference count, or the number of times that article cited by other works. Okay, that is what we have here. So based on that, we have various formulas to measure and assess the author and journal impact factor in different ways. Okay, that is why it is divided into three different categories, like journal level, article level, and author level. So in journal level, what we do, it is the impact of journal on scientific community. So in that way, we measure that metric, the impact of the journal on research community. So what is, so here we have different journal level research metrics. So that we are going to discuss now. Like we have journal citation reports, then Shimago journal rank, then source normalized impact per paper, site score, etc. Then we have article level metrics. So this is the assessment of impact of publishing material. So whatever the material article you are publishing, so it is mainly used to quantify the impact of that material on research community. Okay. So here we have alt metrics. So that is meant for that, because that is what there in your syllabus. Only those. There are n number of such metrics available. So whatever that is mentioned in your syllabus, that one I'm going to discuss here. Then finally you have author level. So this is the assessment of impact of an author that he is making to research community. Okay, so it is the author level. So like this, you have three different types, so that we will discuss one by one. So first we will pick up journal level impact factor. So first metric we use here is journal citation report. I think you will find interesting, right? So we have some formulas, some calculations. So you have to be attentive. Okay, fine. So, so how this journal citation report is counted, right? So actually it is from Thomson Reuters. It is based on Clarivate Analytics. They have measuring this. Okay, so it depends on how many citations are there on a specific journal. I told you it is for journal level. How the impact factor is computed here? It is the formula used. Okay, the number of times articles were cited divided by the number of articles that were published. Okay, so this is the formula we have. And if the journal has high impact factor, then the articles in that journal are cited often, right? If you want to improve your citation factor, you have to publish the papers in that particular journal which has high impact factor. Okay, let's see an example for this. So now this I have taken statistics based on previous 2 years. Okay, so this is what I have. So this is an example to understand how this JCR matrix is computed. Suppose if I'm trying to compute this general citation report for 2020, okay, then I'm taking the previous 2 years statistics, that is 2018 and 19 statistics. So what I do is the number of times articles which are published in 2018 and 19 which are cited by the articles which are published in 2020. So this is the number I am getting. This is the statics. The previous 2 years, whatever the articles published, so how many such articles are cited in present year? That number I'm taking as 200. Then the second denominator factor here, the total number of citable items published in 2018 and 19. That means in 2018 and 19, how many articles which are cited? So it is not, suppose some 10 articles, new articles can cite the same article. So that is termed as 1 here. So such 73 articles are having citable items. So this is the frequency, the number of times the articles which are cited in 2020. Now, when you divide these two values, you are getting the journal citation report or impact factor for 2020, that is 2.73. So like this, you can measure the impact factor of a journal for present year. So this is one metric we use. I hope you got this point. Okay, I hope you don't have any doubt here, right? Next, you have source normalized impact per paper. So this is also at the journal level, and this is in short called as SNP. Okay, and this is created by Henk Moy, and this is to correct the differences in citations. Yes. I think 2 of you have raised your hand. Do you have any doubt? Shall we take up the questions later? Yes? Okay, fine. I'll move on to this. You have any doubts, you can just type in your chat box. Okay. Okay, fine. So this is a SNP factor here. This is one of the research metric. And this is used to overcome the differences that is present in journal impact factor. And here, this is the formula we use for measuring that metric. Citation count per paper divided by citation potential within its field. So based on your domain, you just check the citation potential. So that is the denominator factor. Numerator factor is citation count per paper. Okay. So this is based on weighted citations, and the statistic is collected for previous 3 years. But the problem here is it is not possible to calculate the SNP factor by ourselves. Okay, so this has to be calculated by that particular journal or Scopus index data. So if you visit the scopus.com website, so in the right corner, you can get all these statistics like SNP, SJR, site score, etc. So some metrics we can calculate manually, some metrics we cannot calculate. It depends on the data collected over the years based on weighted citations, based on citation potential within that field, and so many factors involved. So that is generated automatically by Scopus website, so that you can check later. Okay. Then we have Shimago Journal Rank. So that is in short called as SJR. And this is the formula we use here. It is the average number of weighted citation received. Okay. It is so you can mute your background. Okay. So I'll just continue because only few topics are remaining. So I'll just quickly finish those topics. These are some of the evaluation process we have for finding the impact factor. So one of such impact factor metric is SJR. So here, this is the formula we use. This is the average number of weighted citation received in a year divided by the number of documents published in previous 3 years. So previous 3 years statistics we are taking here. And it is the measure of scientific influence of journals. It is based on the number of citations and the importance of or the prestige, importance of the journals. See, it is the improved version of SNIP, and it gives the greater weightage for the citations from influential journals. And once again, the statistics cannot be calculated manually. So for that SJR factor, you can check with the Scopus data by visiting that website. I think in some research articles, it will be associated with SJR research metric. So the way in which they calculate depends on that website, so that you can check. Okay. Then we have impact per publication. So this is similar to your journal impact factor. It is same as that. Here also we have scholarly articles published in 3 previous years divided by number of scholarly paper published in the same 3 years. So this is the formula we use. And this is the different name given for journal impact factor that we discussed earlier. Okay. The same as that.
ಒಂದೇ ಫ್ಲೋರ್ ಇದ್ದಿತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನ ರಿನೋವೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಡುಪ್ಲೆಕ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದನ್ನೇ ಒಂದೇ ಫ್ಲೋರ್ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದು ಅವ್ರ ಮಾವ ಸತ್ತೋದ್ರು ಆಯ್ತಾ.
Excuse me, can you mute your background?
ಅವರು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಜಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಇದ್ರು ಅವಾಗ ಆ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲೇ ಇದ್ರು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ. ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಒಂದು ಶಾಪ್ ತರ ಇದೆ.
Okay. Then we have site score. So this site score we can compute manually. So this is the formula we use here. The number of citations received from previous 4 years divided by the number of documents published in previous 4 years. Okay. So this is based on 4-year statistics. The site score, it is a journal impact factor that we have. It is calculated at journal level. Okay. It is based on 4 years data that is mentioned here. As you can check in the example. Okay. So here 2019 site score is mentioned, and this is 2020 site score till date. It is mentioned. Okay. It is based on 4 previous years data. Suppose if you are computing for 2019, so from 2019 4-year previous data you have to collect. So it gives the number of citations in that period and total cited documents. Okay, so that ratio gives the site score. Then this till date, the number of citations happened, and here the number of cited documents. Okay, so this is the score that is mentioned here. Only thing is here it is based on 4 years data. Okay, so this is what we have. This is about journal level impact factor. Then now we will discuss the article level as well as author level impact factor. So this will be more interesting, right? Because we always want to improve our citation score. So now let's see how this is depending and how this is calculated. So we all know the metrics means it is like it is some kind of measurement. So in academic publishing industry, we measure the impact of any published research based on metrics that is mentioned here like H index, G index, I10 index and alt metrics. I told you earlier, alt metrics is article level, remaining 3 are author level, and there are good source of such metrics which are provided by Google Scholar. I think if you have an account in Google Scholar, you can check with your citations with all these metrics, right? So now let us see how these metrics are evaluated. So you will be interesting to, it is interesting to find these values. So first one, it is H index, right? So how this H index is used? Actually, this H index, it is introduced by Web of Science, and it is used to quantify research output based on author's productivity and impact. Okay, you listen carefully how this H index is calculated, because it is required for the author or any research scholar. So as you can see here, H index is nothing but, so this is the formula we use here. The number of papers, okay, with the citation number greater than or equal to H. So this is the criteria we use for measuring this metric, okay. Now say for example, if the scholar has the H index value 37, means his 37 papers are cited at least 37 times. So this is the meaning, okay. The number of papers with the citation number greater than or equal to H. So what is the meaning? So if the author has H index 37, means his 37 papers are cited at least 37 times. Okay, we will have the detailed example in the next slide. Prior to that, let us know about the advantages and disadvantages of this H index, right? So that is listed here. It allows direct comparison with the disciplines. Based on domain, you can have comparison. And it measures quantity and impact by a single value. So these are the advantages of H index. And what is the disadvantage? So it will not give accurate measure for early researchers. So that is the disadvantage. You will be having low H index value. And it is calculated by using articles that are indexed by Web of Science only. So that is also one of the drawback. And we have two different tools for measuring H index. Like one is, as of course, it is Web of Science. Another one is Google Scholar. So these are the two, because Google Scholar, it is, it is using a general search engine. Obviously, it supports this H index. Now let us see an example for this. Okay, H index. So it will be more clear for you. So I have taken one, this one situation. Suppose a scholar, okay, who has published 20 papers. Okay, you listen carefully. If the scholar has published 20 papers, and out of which 15 papers have no citations, so you can exclude those 15 papers which are not cited in any other work. Okay, and the remaining citations are listed here. It is in the decreasing order. Okay, paper number 1, the number of citations 13. Paper number 2, number of citations 7. Then paper number 3, number of citations 3. Paper number 4, number of citations 2. And paper number 5, the number of citations 1. Now for this statistics, what is the H index value? So as it is mentioned here, it is 3. How it is 3? So what is the definition of H index? The number of papers cited at least how many times? It is 3 times in this example. As you can see here, this first paper cited at least 3 times because maximum is 13. Okay. Paper number 2 cited at least 3 times. Maximum citation is 7. And this paper 3, it is cited 3 times. So it is equal. Okay. Now, what about paper number 4? It is cited only 2 times. So I cannot have H index value as 4 here because this number is greater than this number of citation. For my criteria, the number of citations must be greater than or equal to paper number. Are you getting my point? You have seen the definition here, right? The number of papers with the citation number must be greater than or equal to H. It should hold good this condition. So that condition holds good only till here in this level. Below this, the value is lesser. The number of citation is less than paper number. Till here, it is greater than or equal to paper number. I cannot have H index value as 4. I can have H index value as 3 only. Are you getting my point? So what is the meaning here? H index of 3 means the author has published at least 3 papers that have received at least 3 citations. So for this, your H index value is 3. So now let's see the next matrix, that is G index. Okay. So this is proposed by Liu-Egge in 2006 as an improvement on H index, because that is the disadvantage of H index for early researchers. That is why he introduced a concept of G index, that is to improve your citation factor. So how this is measured, right? You just go through the definition that is given here. You have to read carefully to understand how this metric is evaluated, right? So I'll be reading slowly, so you try to understand. It is a given set of articles ranked in decreasing order of the number of citations that they have received. A G index is the unique largest number such that top G articles received at least G squared citations. Are you getting my point? So you have to arrange your research articles based on the order of citations, and that cumulative value must be equal to or greater than or equal to the square of citations. Okay. So we will have a detailed example in the next slide. So now we will try to understand the theoretical concept of this. As you can see here in this example, G index 20 means the scholar has published at least 20 articles that combine to have received at least 400 citations. G index 20 means the cumulative cited articles in his publication is at least having 420 squared, 400 citations. So this is how we evaluate this metric. Okay. Now what is the advantage of D index, right? So it accounts for the performance of author's top articles, and this index puts more weight on highly cited citations. Now, what is the disadvantage? Because it is introduced in 2006, because for many years we are using H index as a impact factor criteria, but now it is introduced in 2006, and debate still continues whether G index is superior to H index, and it is not as widely accepted as your H index factor. Okay, so that is the thing we have. Now let's see how this G index is computed. So as you can see here, okay, so I'll be taking the same example with the different number of citations. So for instance, a scholar has published 20 papers, okay, out of which 15 papers do not have any citations, and only 5 papers have citations, and they are listed the decreasing order of rank, like number of citations. First paper, it is cited 350 times. Second paper, 35 times, third paper 10 times, 4 papers 3 times, 5 paper 20 times. Then what will be the G index value here? The D index value is the cumulative sum of at least, it should have G squared citation. When I add all these citations for each paper, it will be 350 plus 35 plus 10 plus 3 plus 2. That means how much? I have 400 citations from this 5 different papers, right? 400 citations means my G index value will be square root of 400, that is 20. Okay, so my G index will be 20 here. Now what will be my H index for this given statistics? So what will be my H index? Can you just tell me? Any answer? Yes, yes. So many of you wrote it is 3. Yes, it is 3. How it is 3? Can you tell me? How it is 3? Have you calculated this G index as 3 here? Do you have any idea? So what is the criteria used for finding H index? The number of citations must be greater than or equal to the paper number, right? So it depends on paper number. As you can see here, up to 3, they are cited at least 3 times. After that, this is cited 3 times here, but the paper number is 4. So this is greater than this value, right? So that is correct. So many of you answered correctly. So that's good. So H index value for this is 3, right? So G index you understood, no? It is 20. So that means scholar has published at least 20 articles that combine to have received at least 400 citations. So this is about G index. Then we will move on to the next metric, that is I-10 index. Okay. So what is this? I think you have come across with the I-10 index, very simple metric that is used for evaluating your metric. It is actually created by Google Scholar to measure the productivity of a scholar. Okay. So I-10 index means what? The number of publication with at least 10 citations, right? Suppose if I-10 index is 3, means what? The 3 articles are cited at least 10 times. So it is very simple, right? So that is the advantage of this I-10 index. It is very simple and it is straightforward to calculate. And my citations, as you have seen, if you have Google Scholar account, in case if you don't have, you just open an account in Google Scholar so that you can get all these statistics automatically. But that is not the accurate statistics, because most of the research papers cited in other index databases will not be specified in Google Scholar. So there will be always mismatch. But to some extent, you can follow the statistics given by Google Scholar. Okay, but it will not include all your citations. That is for sure. But as a performance metrics, you can keep it. So it is easy to use that. Now, what is the disadvantage? This I-10 index is used only by Google Scholar. As you can see here, this is how in Google Scholar, it will be displayed, the citation indices for Research Scholar. This gives the number of citations. This gives H index. This gives I-10 index. Okay. So number of citations, you know how the number of cited documents of your published material. And H index we discussed just now. Then I-10 index, right? So here, what are the total number of citation? 77,539. Oh, you just see the figure there. It is very difficult, 1 or 2 citations nowadays, but here it is the accountability is 77,539, right? And since 2008, how many citations done? 27,837. That means there are around 27,837 research articles have cited his work, right? H index value, it is 80. So it's a really fascinating figure, right? Then I-10 index is 331. So 331 means what? There are 331 articles which are cited at least 10 times. See, apart from I-10 index, you also have other metrics like I-20 index, I-30 index, right? So it is similar to I-10. In I-20, what? We have the articles which are cited, the number of articles which are cited at least 20 times. It will going to give that statistics. I-30 means it is going to give the number of articles which are cited at least 30 times. So those are the statistics we can have apart from this I-10 index. And as you can see here, this fascinating statistics, it's from whom? Can you just guess? Who might be having this kind of fascinating citation score, H index, I-10 index? Do you have any idea? Can I get some answers? Yes. So anybody can tell this. Can you guess? Who is having this statistics? Yes, any answer? Okay, actually this is from Sir Charles Darwin. Okay, so that is his citation statistics we have. Okay, that is about I-10 index. Now I'll move on to the last research matrix, that is alt matrix. Okay, and this is article level. Okay, so far we discussed journal level research matrix, how it is computed. So what we can compute manually, what we can compute automatically, that also we discussed. And we discussed author level research matrix. So it is my last slide, which is specifying the article level research metric. So there are many such metrics available. So whatever I have discussed here, so these are included in your syllabus. Only those metrics I have discussed. Apart from that, we have n number of such research metrics in different categories like journal level, article level, as well as author level. Okay, so that you can explore further, because now it is we are all netizens, so we can get information anywhere from the world. So that is why we are like self-tutors now, right? So you can explore further. So those options. So now about alt metrics, right? So it is an alternative solution for computing metrics from traditional citation metrics that we discussed so far. And this can include information from many sources. It could be peer-reviewed journals, Wikipedia information, a government agency information, public policy data, research blogs, media coverage, news, bookmarks, or information from social networks like Twitter, Instagram. So there are many options. From these options, the statistics are collected to count or to calculate this alt matrix. Okay. And this is actually depending on the company and the information that they are using. It is purely the business oriented, and it is based on a particular organization. So they have different metrics that is used for calculating this. And so this is one of such value given here, as you can see here. So for a particular company, if the alt metric value 337 means this score are statistics collected from different segments, like from news outlets, this is the number, blocked by this, from blog, referenced in different policy sources, tweeted by these many people. So like this, the work is cited in different domains. All these cumulative sum is used to calculate this alt metric score. And if you have higher alt metric score means your research article is received lot of attention. So it is multidisciplinary. It is not meant for one domain like scientific domain. it is meant for multiple domains. It could be anything. Okay, so that is what just now I listed. So based on that, this statistics is derived. Okay, and once again, this score we cannot calculate manually. It has to be calculated automatically by the companies. Okay, so this is at the article level. So what is the impact of article across domains? So that is the metric we use. So this is one of such metrics. There are other metrics that are available. Okay, so this is about my presentation for today's session. So I have covered all the three segments. First, I started with plagiarism. Then what is meant plagiarism, the history of plagiarism, how to prevent it, what are the different forms of plagiarism and how to prevent it, and then how to detect plagiarism using different software tools. There are many software tools are available so that we can explore further. Then I also discussed about the databases, indexing database, the examples for index databases, and where to publish your paper. So how to select a good database with respect to Web of Science and Scopus Index database we discussed. Then I took up with the research metrics, like what is the impact of your research article with respect to journal level, article level, as well as author level. So how these values are computed so that we can keep track of our citation record. So these are the things that I discussed today. So this is the topic that is given to me. So my special acknowledgement to Dr. Rajeshri Narendra Madam for giving this opportunity to present my work. So I really thankful to her. I thanks all the participants for your patient hearing. So let me have any this one queries. In case if you have anything, you can just.
Ma'am, question session we'll have. Yeah. Any
sure.
questions? Yeah.
Yeah, you can just type in your chat box.
Or maybe if you can unmute them, if they want to ask any questions, they can ask.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Thanks, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Oh, okay. No problem, ma'am. We are very thankful. It was a very informative session, and I'm so sure the participants learnt a lot. I knew you will be ideal for this presentation. So.
Okay, thanks, ma'am.
Yeah. Ma'am, let us see if any questions are there.
Okay, fine.
இது பண்ணுவாரு புரியுதுங்களா என்ன கூட வந்தாலும் இதுன்னு சொல்ல மாட்டாரு இன்னும் கொஞ்சம்
Hello, ma'am. My name is Anupama. I have a question here. You did mention a lot of plagiarism that we can use. Is it necessary to check in multiple tools, or can we check in?
Yeah. You can just type in your chat box. A lot of background noise is coming. 1 minute.
Any questions coming, ma'am?
I'm not able to see my chat box. 1 minute, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. Any tool to calculate H index?
Ma'am, actually in Google Scholar, it is calculated automatically, ma'am. H index in Web of Science also we have tools for calculating that. Apart from that, you can calculate manually also. So that option also we have.
Okay.
So let me check with the chat box.
Yeah. Everyone is asking for the PowerPoint presentations, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. I'll just
Yeah.
share
If
it
you can
later.
send a PDF of it, that will be great, ma'am.
Okay. Ma'am, are you able to see any questions typed in chat box?
That one, should we check in multiple tools is the thing for H-index only, same thing, whatever. You
Yeah, we
already
can check,
answered
ma'am.
that.
Actually, it is supported by Web of Science and Google Scholar. So we can check. But as I told you, in Google Scholar, all the information will not be cited. So there will be some kind of mismatch.
Okay.
So you can just go through manual citation number and then you can keep it for your record. Apart from that, we have other options also. So that is one thing we can do.
Okay. Google Scholar or Scopus H-index, which one is powerful?
Scopus index is more powerful, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh, I'm able to see the chat box now.
Yeah, now you're able to see, ma'am?
Yeah, the one. Okay, fine. Yeah, 2019, actually 2020 data also you can check. You can just open that window and you just, till date information will be shown in Scopus website. That is what I told you. The one question is from Anupama regarding multiple tools for plagiarism, right? When you go for final phase of your publication, then you can go for paid version. So apart from that, as I told earlier, first you go for normal Google search engine for checking plagiarized content. Then you can use one or two open source tools for checking your plagiarized content. Initial level, you can filter the copied content from your article. And for final submission, prior to that, you can go for the paid version of your, so that the number of iterations can be reduced, because for every iteration you will be charged, right? So in that way, you can do your checking, ma'am. So,
Okay, ma'am.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, madam, for providing your insights on plagiarism software tools such as Turnitin, Orkun, then databases. You spoke about indexing database, citation database, Web of Science, Scopus, and also discussed about the research metrics such as impact factor metrics, H-index, G-index, and I-10 index. So it is a very informative session. Thank you very much. So I'm so sure once you share the presentations, I'll be sending it to the participants. So it will be a
Sure.
useful tool for them, especially the research scholars who will be writing
Yeah.
the exam, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thanks a
very
lot,
much.
ma'am. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you for sparing your time and preparing for this presentation, which is very much out of topic for you. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, ma'am. Thanks, ma'am. Thanks for your support.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And for the participants, I've activated the feedback thing. So you people can send your feedbacks on all the sessions and all the things that has happened. And it'll generate itself the certificate for you. And please let us know how things have happened. And thank you very much for attending this workshop on research and publication ethics. We at Dayanand Sagar thank each and every participant for making this workshop a very successful one. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, can you please share the YouTube videos, ma'am, for this today's workshop?
Could you please?
So yeah, I'll be doing that. I'll share the recorded. Actually, it's the YouTube recording should be there, but I'll share you all the videos. Okay, no problem. Absolutely no problem. I'll be collecting it tomorrow. So sometime tomorrow I'll share the link for it.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming. And
இல்ல அந்த கொரிய டேட் நீ இங்க நீங்க ரிசீவ் பண்ணிருந்தா அந்த டேட் போட்டோம் அந்த டேட் போட்டு செப்பரேட்
I'll share the feedback link. Somebody was asking for it. It's there in the invitation, but I'll share it now. Yeah.